Hey everyone, I thought I'd just make a really quick video before the Monday stock market session kicks off in the US, covering the volatility over the last few hours on Bitcoin. So without further ado, let's get started. On the daily time frame, you can see we have a inside bar compared to the Sunday bar, and it's barely an inside bar. Like, it's a higher high and a lower low. Sorry, a higher low and a lower high, but not by much. So it has been an absolutely volatile day. That daily BX trender has flipped from dark red through to light green at one point, and it looks like it's going to settle on dark green potentially. We'll have to see how the stock market session goes, obviously. In the 4-hour time frame, we got two closes underneath the trend line and 50% level after we saw this massive pump up. When I made my previous video, we got that absolute smack right back down, almost a full reversal. You can see it had a lower high and a higher low, had another inside bar. But one thing that I always find very interesting is when you get a very high, a very large range bar with a smaller bar that closes at around the same price as the open, but also at the same price as the large range bar. The next bar is often a reversal. Now, if you're good with your candlestick patterns, you'll know that that is a candlestick pattern with a name, which once upon a time I knew off by heart. I no longer know that off by heart, so I'm not going to pretend like I know that. But you can just see, look at where this reversal has gone, right into the 50% level of the current local high to the local correction low, obviously local being a 4-hour time frame. And obviously we'll just have to see how the stock market session plays out, whether we manage to get these higher lows playing out and we see another attempt at making a new high above $83,000, or whether we'll see these lower highs start to play out. Obviously, we've only got one lower high, and we've got potentially 3 higher lows. If we count this, this, and this, obviously not including that. One thing to note is you could potentially read this as a bit of a bullish pennant pattern, where we see a run up and a compression with higher lows, but also lower highs. Now, obviously, the analysis from my previous video is still valid. Bullish pennant or not, price action is still weak for as long as it is underneath the upper trend line of this channel. For price action to get strong and for us to see some really solid bullish action, you'd want to see price back above this upper blue line at around $85,000. Not much more to say, other than everything since this 79.5K double top has potentially been distribution. One thing this really reminds me of is actually the Bitcoin weekly chart, where we saw, our 123K tops, 123K, and then also had a 124K top. We had a pullback, then we had a strong run into a slightly higher high, but that was it. And obviously, if you drew your speed lines, whoops, that is in yellow. I'm not even sure if it's called a speed line. I just remember that's what Michael called it once upon a time. But you can see price broke underneath it. Even though price actually came higher, it didn't get back above that line, which meant that price on this run up was weaker than that run up. And I think that exact same thing is happening on the 4-hour time frame, where we obviously got our very strong run up from like 67K through to 79K. But ever since then, this run up, even though it's gone higher than 79.5K, just feels weaker. Now, obviously, I'm not going to ramble and repeat everything that I said a few hours ago. And obviously, the monthly and weekly charts have not changed much in just a few hours. But USDT dominance, it looks like we're getting one step closer to confirming that bullish divergence. DXY, I didn't cover this in my earlier video today, but we've closed a weekly candle underneath the 33 fair value band, which is a bearish sign, but also we do have buying pressure on that monthly BX trender being light green. So we've got conflicting signals basically, where closes underneath the fair value band is bearish, but we only have one close obviously. If we got 3 or more closes, that would potentially make me believe we're going to see at least another move down towards that 95 to 93 level. But on the other hand, if we start to see moves up from here, the green monthly BX trender is going to make me believe that any move up is going to be sustainable for at least multiple weeks and potentially even months. Obviously, we know the DXY is inversely correlated to assets, as Michael says, if you ignore all other factors at play. So if we get a bullish breakout in the US dollar, similar to what happened through December of January of 2025, that will probably put a lid on stocks, cryptos, commodities, and other assets. And if we start to see some more closes and lower highs underneath the 33 fair value band, and we might just see a more bullish time for assets. Now, speaking of bullish, if we look at the S&P 500, you can see we do have that 5 weeks up signal that I talked about in my previous video, where typically when you start to see 5 weeks up, it generally means the price doesn't have to reverse immediately. You know, Gann's 7 to 10 bar rule doesn't seem to play out as well on the S&P 500 as it does on some other markets, such as Bitcoin. But even when you start to see 5 weeks up, as I backtested for you in the last video, we'll tend to see consolidation or minor correction. And that correction could potentially come down to around 7,000 points. If you've watched Michael's video today, he's stalking 7,200 points as a shallow correction possibility, or about 7,000 as a deeper correction possibility. Now, on the daily time frame, you can see we're hugging between the +1 and +2 standard deviation bands, which is typically a very strong uptrending market. However, that is usually not very sustainable. You can see back through here of May in 2025, when you start to get such bullish price action, eventually it has to pull back into fair value. So if I backtest it again through here in November 2023, you can see we sat between +1 and +2 standard deviation. We did manage to grind higher for, almost another month before retesting fair value. So if the stock market goes up for another month, maybe Bitcoin will have a shot at that 86 to potentially $90,000 region. Remembering the bear market is still on until we break that $98,000 top. On the flip side, if we start to see a rollover and a retest of either 7,200 or 7,000 points even on the S&P 500, that could potentially set Bitcoin up for its next weekly swing down into what I expect to be potentially a higher low, just based off of all the seasonality stuff that Jason and Michael have been talking about, etc., where we bumble around for a bit and trade between, maybe 65K and 85K for the next few months before we see a potentially August, September-ish low. But yeah, that's my quick update for you, and we'll just have to see how the stock market session plays out for the Monday session over in the US, and I'll probably get a video out around market close if I have the time. Thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Goodbye.